Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another fun science talk topic with the naturalist educators at Chucky Meadows Parks Foundation. Today, we're going to be talking about tree identification and color change. My name is Bradlyn, and in part one of this topic, we're going to focus on why leaves change color. You have certainly noticed the change in trees with the onset of autumn. Our once green, bushy trees begin to change colors and leaves begin to fall. Why does this happen? Well, leaves are colored by molecules called pigments, and there are three types of pigments present in leaves. These are chlorophyll, carotenoids, and anthocyanins. During the spring and summer, the leaves of a tree are responsible for most of the growth and contain the majority of food for the trees. These leaves are typically colored green and get this color from a pigment called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll absorbs energy from sunlight and then uses this energy to produce carbohydrates and oxygen from water and carbon dioxide. This process is called photosynthesis and is one of the main reasons that life on Earth is able to exist at all. Photosynthesis occurs in the green parts of plants, where chlorophyll is stored, and is a chemical reaction that provides oxygen and sugars for Earth. Carbon dioxide and water are taken up by the plants, and using energy from the sun, the plant converts these into sugar and oxygen. During the spring and summer, there is plenty of sunlight, so trees are easily able to do photosynthesis and therefore produce lots of chlorophyll. However, in the fall, days start getting shorter and colder, which means that less sunlight is hitting the earth and trees are unable to do as much photosynthesis. In order to save energy, some plants stop producing chlorophyll and instead break it down into smaller molecules. As the chlorophyll leaves the leaves, other pigments that are already present become visible. These pigments are carotenoids and are masked by chlorophyll during the majority of the year. Carotenoids produce yellow, orange, and brown colors. When leaves begin to fall off of the tree, a layer of cells forms along the base of its stalk, which blocks off the transport of sugar from tree to leaf. The sugars that are left in the leaves react with tree sap to produce a pigment called anthocyanin, which is responsible for the leaves turning red, magenta, and purple. While all leaves change color in the fall, certain colors are typically characteristic of particular types of trees. For example, the leaves of oak trees typically turn red, brown, or russet. Dogwood trees turn purplish red, and quaking aspen turns yellow. The timing of color change can also vary by species, and the amount and brilliance of colors that develop in the autumn are related to weather conditions like temperature and moisture that occur both before and while chlorophyll is decreasing in the leaves. Soil moisture also affects the intensity of colors in the fall. And some trees stay green all year long, such as pine trees. These are called evergreens.
Hello everyone, my name is Anna, and for the second portion of this lesson, we're going to be talking about different ways you can identify trees. And there's lots of different ways out there. One of the most common ways is using a field guide specific to the area you live in, such as the West Coast for our area. Remember, you can always check with a local library to see if they have any of these guides as an alternative to actually buying your own. There's also lots of apps out there that you can download for free on your phone. One of these is called LeafSnap. And then the other method that we're going to be using today is called a dichotomous tree. So let's talk a little bit more about what a dichotomous key is. The keys are based on physical traits that help you narrow down identification. Basically, it provides you with a set of choices, and you pick which answer best describes what you're trying to identify. You usually will have two choices. Yes, it does have this certain trait, or no, my object does not have this certain trait. It's a fairly simple idea. So before we actually go into our guide, let's talk about some of these vocab words that are going to help us understand and better navigate our key. So one of the first vocab words describes our types of trees. So you can either have coniferous or deciduous trees. Coniferous trees typically have some type of needles that stay year-round. These trees also spread their seeds using cones, so typically you're going to think of junipers or pine trees. Then you also have deciduous trees. These trees have broader leaves that will be lost in the fall, and then the trees regrow them in the spring. And instead of using cones, these trees usually use flowers to spread their seeds. You can think of an example of maple or oak. So besides using cones or flowers, the leaves are one of the best ways to identify a tree. So let's talk about some of the characteristics that are typical for coniferous trees. First, you want to pay attention to how long your needles are. Then you'll want to notice how your needles are connected to your branch. So, for example, on our first one, you'll notice how the leaves are directly connected to the branch and by itself. We would describe this as single. You can also have clusters and bundles. Bundles are when 2 to 5 needles are attached together. In this case, you can see that we have a bundle of 2 leaves. Clusters are when we have more than 5 needles bunched together. Probably there are too many for us to count, but we know there are more than 5 and we can clearly see that they're all attached together versus our case where we have just one single needle. There are lots of different types of needles. Needles can come in different shapes, such as round or square, and even flat. So for example, even though it's kind of hard to see on a computer screen, we can see how some of these needles might be more round compared to this needle that's a lot more flat. We can also have needles that are described as scaly. So if you look at this thuya plant, and we'll do a close-up right here, you can see that they're composed of smaller leaves that put together kind of give a scaly look. For conifers, your cones can also really help you identify what tree you have. For this presentation, we're not going to go into depth, but a lot of your field guides or even the web can tell you a little bit more about the different cones out there and how they can help you identify a tree. So now let's talk about our leaf characteristics for deciduous trees. Our first vocab word is called a petiole. The petiole is the stem of the leaf, or where the leaf connects to the main branch. So in this diagram under here, you can see that the petiole would be this part where it directly connects to the branch. Conifers also have petioles, but they're often smaller and harder to see. Opposite and alternate refer to how the leaves are attached to the tree. For alternative, you can see how the leaves alternate their attachment on the branch. The leaves or connecting points kind of form this zigzag pattern. For opposite, you can see that the leaves are attached directly across from each other. Deciduous leaves can also be single or compound. So here on our left is a sycamore leaf that is made up of just one single part, so this would be called a simple leaf. You can also have compound leaves, which are made up of kind of miniature leaves. These miniature leaves are actually called leaflets. So this entire structure is called the leaf, and the mini leaves are called leaflets. When we look at deciduous leaves, we also want to look at what the edge of the leaf looks like. The edge of the leaf is also called the margin. The margin can be toothed, which means it has kind of a jagged edge to it. And then you can have a single tooth or a double tooth. So here you see just your single tooth, and then the double tooth is basically a tooth on a tooth. Besides toothed margins, you can also have lobed margins. These are basically like finger-like projections that have deep holes or sinuses between each one. You can have pointed or rounded margins. In this case, we have a rounded margin. So now that we have a lot of our vocab handled, let's go ahead and practice going through our key together. So if you haven't already, go ahead and take a time to pause the video and either print out or pull up the dichotomous key that is linked below in the video. Awesome. Okay, so I hope you have your key. So the first thing we want to do whenever we get a leaf is decide whether it's deciduous or coniferous. And in this case, we know it's deciduous because it's not needles. So we turn to our deciduous part in our key. And the first question we have is question 1. It says, do you have opposite branching or alternate branching? And in this case, we can see that we have alternate branching because they're not directly across from each other. They form that Z zigzag shape. So we choose alternate branching, which takes us to question 4. Question 4 asks us if we have compound leaves or simple leaves. And since our leaf is only made up of one piece, we say simple. That takes us to question 8. Question 8 asks if the leaves are lobed or not lobed. We know that they're lobed because they have these finger-like projections and they have these deep spaces in between called sinuses. So we know that it's some type of oak species, which is A through F. So we have a lot of options here, so I would recommend maybe pausing the video and reading through all of them before we go on. But once you read them, you will notice that A through C all talk about rounded lobes, and D through F talk about pointed lobes. So we can tell that our lobes are definitely pointed. A through C is not correct. So now, let's look at D. D says it has pointed lobes. Sinuses extend halfway to mid-vein. Mid-vein is just this vein running through the middle of the leaf. D also says that the leaves are hairless and a dull green. So it's kind of hard to tell if there's hair or not on this image. Obviously, it's on the computer. Hopefully, in real life, you could tell a lot better. So before we make a decision, let's go ahead and keep reading E. E says pointed lobes. Sinuses extend 3/4 of the way to the mid-vein. Leaves are hairless and it's bright green and shiny. F says pointed lobes, deep sinuses, young leaves are hairy underneath, dark green, shiny, and leathery. So from our picture, I think we could discern that our leaf is more on the darker green side. So I would discount E because E is bright green and shiny. So that leaves us with D and F. And other than the hairiness of the leaf, the main difference between them is the sinuses, or the space in between these lobes. I would say our sinuses extend about halfway from the beginning of the leaf to the mid part of the leaf. So that would correspond to answer D. So we could say that our leaf is a red oak. Now that you have gone through a practice one with me, go through your key and try to identify which leaves these are. So there's 4 slides, and you can pause and take as much time as you need. Now here are the answers. Number 1 is a red maple. 2 is an eastern red cedar. 3 is a black lotus. 4 is a jack pine. If you are still just really interested in identifying some more leaves, please feel free to go outside in your backyard. Maybe you can identify the trees that are back there, or with a parent's permission, you guys could go to the park and check out some trees there. Remember, if you can't find a tree on your dichotomous key, use some of those other resources that we talked about at the beginning of the video. So thanks so much for tuning in to another TMPF science lesson. We hope you had fun learning about our trees. To keep up with the latest TMPF news and hopefully some more videos, go ahead and follow us on Facebook at Truckee Meadows Parks Foundation or on Instagram at TM Parks Foundation. If you have ideas for other fun science topics that you'd like to learn about, please leave us a comment in the comment section below. And until next time, don't forget to be a steward.